spent a lot of years not trusting myself. Now, I'm not sure if you're anything like me, but I found it very difficult over the first 45-ish years of my life to really understand how insightful I was and how knowledgeable I was about myself and my life. And it's it's almost like I spent 45 years trying to figure out a way how to give away all of my power and all of my personal authority in the world. When I would in the older days before I guess self-realization, I would ask people for opinions and perspectives. I would ask people for guidance. I would ask people for advice, but it really wasn't, it was masked. I wouldn't ask them for guidance and advice and for their perspective so that I could get their perspective. I was literally getting them to make, without them knowing it, I was getting them to make a decision for me because I didn't feel like I could make a decision if it was if I saw the world one way and you saw it the other way. I would find a way to make the way I saw the world wrong. And I would give up my personal power, my personal authority, and I would find a way to eventually see the world your way. And it sounds delusional now. Thinking about it, it sounds delusional, but it's basically just self-rejection. I didn't understand how wise, how knowledgeable, how intuitive I actually was. And I'm going to go back to that word, how intuitive I actually was. I didn't understand any of that. But what I did know is that when I held a belief in my mind and when I saw something that didn't make sense, I always gave away my way of seeing things to other people. And I tried to, like, almost like, since I was in a place of shame and self-rejection, I didn't believe that anything inside of me was true if it conflicted with the way somebody else saw the world. I can track this back to younger years. Now, if you've listened to this podcast for any period of time, I talk about the impressionable years, the informative years. Somewhere between 0 and 7, 0 and 10 years old, we are a complete subconscious sponge. And what I mean by that is you will believe anything that anybody tells you. You believe in Santa Claus, Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny. You believe in all of these things, and whatever the people you love teach you as being true, whatever they teach you, even if it's false, whatever they teach you to believe, you will believe because you are completely subconscious and you don't possess the ability to think constructively about anything. You agree with what you're taught. And if you grow up in a family that's where there's financial scarcity, you're probably going to learn that there's not enough to go around, and making money is hard, and you've got to work hard for your money, and rich people are greedy and evil. These could be true. And if your parents espouse these, and if your parents and if your teachers and pastors and religious leaders, if they teach you these things, you're going to believe them because you are a subconscious sponge and you don't have the ability to not believe them. You will see the world the way your authority figures see it because you are highly conditionable and highly programmable. And the quality of the beliefs of the people in positions of authority and in influence in your life when you're a child have a great impact on the quality of life that you'll experience until you recognize that their beliefs handed down to you don't need to be true going forward. Or maybe if they hand you empowering beliefs, it gives you an easier way to navigate life. If you grow up in a house, in a home where there's financial stability and financial margin and there's abundance, you're probably going to learn that there, money does grow on trees, that it's easy to make money, that you don't have to work hard to make money, that rich people are awesome and loving, and people, rich people are some of the most generous people on the planet. You're going to learn some of these things, and it's going to give you a tailwind. But if you learn disempowering beliefs, it's going to give you a headwind in life, and you're always going to be facing resistance. Well, I can track back the lack of trust I had in myself to an indoctrination. Let's just call it indoctrination in the religion of my family's choosing, which is no longer my choosing. Now, I did go to religious education, and I remember whether that was the intended message or not, but I remember being connected and believing that I was incapable of making decisions for my life, that only God could make decisions for my life. And I do honestly believe, since that was pounded so deeply into me, since it was pounded so deep, and growing up in a religious environment, a religious family, where they basically, I was convinced from a very young age that I was incapable of navigating or controlling my life and making my own decisions, that I wasn't capable, I wasn't significant enough, I wasn't valuable enough to call my own shots, that I literally needed to hand over all my authority and all my power, that I needed to hand over all of my decision-making processes and capabilities to other people. And I operated from this place for a very long time, even in the Marine Corps, even in corporate America. I learned how to use these in relationships without having things blow up on me for most of my career. But when it came down to it, I lacked the ability to trust myself to make a decision when other people had other perspectives and beliefs that weren't completely in line with the way I saw the world. So if I had to choose between what I believed and what you believed, I would choose what you believed. Or if I had to choose between the way I saw things unfolding and playing out, and between the way you saw them unfolding and playing out, I would choose yours. If I had a favorite color, I play this game with some of my students. If I had a favorite color and you had a favorite color, then your favorite color would become my favorite color, because my favorite color was probably wrong in some way. And I laugh at it now, but it it was a very, very delusional way to live, to continuously and constantly give up my own personal power, my own personal authority, my own decision-making capability and processes, and just hand them to other people and say, well, there's something wrong with me, so I'm just gonna choose what you would choose. Now, at some point, somewhere, when I started making, different life choices, and I pivoted around age 43, I started, and this is 2016, I really started understanding how the severity of how much I handed over my personal power and my personal authority to other people, and how little I actually accepted, loved, and trusted myself to be able to understand what was right for me. And I'm going to emphasize what was right for me, not what was right for somebody else, but what was right for me. When I learned how to, and this is a journey of self-mastery, where we go inside of our mind and our body, and we start to understand what's locked in our mind, our body, our subconscious mind, what's in our programming, what's in our conditioning. When we start to see the unseeable, and we start to recognize the noise and the conflict and the disempowerment that's inside of us, we start to understand what's working, what's actually empowering in us, and what's not empowering in us. And we start to clear out the mess and clear out the cobwebs of what's not for us, what's not perfect for us, what's not in alignment with us and for us. When we start to clear that out, and we start to replace the disempowering thoughts and emotions and beliefs with empowering emotions, thoughts, and beliefs, This is called a journey of self-mastery. And when I embarked on a journey of self-mastery, I started to learn how to trust myself at a deeper level. And it was scary at first because I was still carrying around this belief that I was incapable of making my own decisions. And one of the first major decisions I ever made for myself, unapologetically, was to hire a mentor when I started when I started this journey. I hired a mentor, and I actually paid someone to help mentor me through the transformation and through the transition that I embarked on. And at that moment, my wife fought me like hell. She just like we were not in a good state. We were not in a good place. And when I agreed without her consent to pay a mentor to help me through this transformation, she attacked and she fought me like hell. But it was the first time I ever stood up for myself. And from there, I learned how to stand up for myself more and more. And I learned how to understand what was in me, my intuitive nature, the inner wisdom, the inner voice, the inner guide, that inner thing, that inner knower that was inside of me. I learned how to trust it. And when I started putting the pieces of my life back together, my ability to trust myself, my ability to listen to myself, my ability to connect with that, my inner knower, my inner guide, my inner wisdom, my intuition, my inspiration. As I learned to trust myself, that started to get amplified. And as it started to amplify, and as I started to live from that, my wife didn't like that very much because she was part of she received the benefit of me never making the decision for myself. She received benefit of me continuing to hand over my personal power and my personal authority. And she didn't like when I started recovering my personal power and my personal authority. And I started making decisions that were best for me without consulting her or without getting her agreement. And that's because I never lived a life true to myself. I always compromised who I was to make somebody else right, so that somebody else could benefit from it. Now, after a while, as my ability to trust myself built and grew, as my ability to understand what was in me trying to get out, when I started to understand what kind of life I wanted to live instead of looking at the life that I was living, I started taking steps in that direction, and she continued to attack, and that's when I filed for divorce. Now, that single act right there is really what put my marriage back together. But hiring a mentor and then filing for divorce, those were two ways that I took back my personal power and my personal authority over my own life and my own circumstance and my own quality, my inner quality of life. Because again, up to that point, if it was between my happiness and your happiness, I would choose your happiness. If it was between what I wanted and what you wanted, I would go with what you wanted because I didn't trust myself. I didn't respect myself. I didn't value myself. I didn't love myself. Inside of you, deep inside of you, there is a knower. There is a wise person. There is a voice. There is a soul. There's an inspiration in there that knows exactly what's perfect for you. Now, if you're anything like me over the first 43, 45 years of my life, I turned the volume of that voice down. And I learned to tune it out, and I didn't trust it. I believed that wasn't okay to honor that voice. It wasn't okay. I felt that inner knower, that inner wise person, that inner inspiration, it was a liar, and it was like the devil, and it was trying to convince me of the wrong thing to do. And this is why I gave up my personal power and personal authority to other people and let them be the guide for my life. But when I started this journey of self-mastery and I started turning up the volume of that inner knower, and I started respecting it and appreciating it and understanding how how beneficial it was, how I was actually more intuitive than I ever imagined. And when I listened to that inner knower, that inner voice, that gut feeling, I crush it. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't create additional challenges. It means it creates the exact challenges that I need to grow in the exact direction that's perfect for me. That intuition doesn't always lead to a beneficial outcome right out of the chute. But if I continue to follow that intuition, it always leads to a beneficial outcome. It just might not look like it at first. But that intuition knows the path and purpose for my life. And all I had to do was learn to trust it and honor it. Back in 2016, when I started this journey and I hired the mentor and I started understanding, and connecting with a lot of wisdom and reading books, and I started studying some ancient systems like astrology, and some of the newer systems based on astrology, like human design and gene keys. I started studying the soul contracts and the life you were born to live. These are mystical systems that help you understand yourself at a very, very, very deep level. And these were critical. These systems, they didn't tell me anything that I didn't know about myself, but they helped validate what was in me that I knew all along, but I just didn't trust. They didn't tell me who I was, but they allowed me, it's almost like they gave me permission to believe in myself again, and to trust myself again, and to choose myself again. When I started studying these systems, I became an avid student, and I went off the deep end with them. And what I mean by that is I spent tens of thousands of hours studying these systems. And I've done episodes with Ashley Mae Fernandez and another episode about the soul sciences. And that's what these are. These systems comprise the soul sciences. Now, in my coaching practice, I teach the soul sciences. Inside of our mastermind, we have a call specifically dedicated to the soul sciences. We also have a business call. We also have a book study. We also have a mindset call. We have a men's call, and we have a women's call. And then we retreat, an in-person retreat twice a year. So there's a lot of moving parts in the Inner Wealth Mastermind. But one of the calls is a soul sciences call. And that whole call is dedicated to us studying these systems so that it continues to help us unlock new levels of authenticity and trust and self-love and self-belief and self-respect and internal states of value and worth, not by telling us who we are, but by giving ourselves permission to trust ourselves and that inner knower and that inner wise voice, that intuition that's been there all along that we probably just dimmed. Now, I've wanted to share these systems forever, and I've always been very, very scared and frightened to share them because they're weird, they're mystical, they're woo-woo, right? And the world doesn't like things, typically, the world doesn't like things that haven't been accepted by the masses. But I've seen how many lives these systems have changed. And I've seen that they've changed lives. They changed my life. They changed the lives of other people. They changed the lives of our students. They are studied around the world, but they're still a little bit taboo. They're still a little bit rejected, especially by the religious community. Now, the other day, I made a post about the soul sciences, and it was almost like a coming out party for me. I shared my natal astrology, and I'm talking about on Facebook. You can connect with me on Facebook, just Mike Kitko. I shared my natal astrology chart. I shared my human design chart. I shared my gene keys chart, and I shared my soul contract chart. I shared it, and I explained and I expressed how difficult that was for me to share that because I was going to be perceived as a weirdo and woo-woo and mystical. And these things were too spiritual for a material world. But you know what? Deep down inside, I always knew since I started diving into new levels of self-awareness. I always knew that I'm not here just to live in the material world, that I am here. I am more a spiritualist than I am a materialist. And I love the spiritual world. And I love bringing the spiritual world into the material instead of the material into the spiritual. I am a human being. I'm a spirit having a human experience, not a human being having a spiritual experience. And I love unlocking and unleashing the soul sciences and all these mystical forms of ancient wisdom, really, to help people truly understand who they are and accept who they are, why they're here, and what direction their life is moving. And these systems do help you reveal that. Now, I've been afraid to share these systems for a long time because I didn't trust myself. And I didn't think that the thing that I wanted to share was the thing that the world wanted to receive. And it was another form of self-rejection. This path of self-mastery isn't about ever getting to a point where you master your life, you master your path, or you master yourself. It's about constantly revealing another layer of authenticity. And this happens and this goes on for the rest of your life. And that's exactly what's happened. Over the years, I've wanted and I've had a deep desire to share the soul sciences. And I started sharing it. And if you look at the engagement and the interaction with that Facebook post, it's been overwhelming. It got overwhelming number of interactions and comments about people who also love the soul sciences and people who are interested in learning the soul sciences. That deep inner knower in me always knew the thing that I came here to share, part of what I came here to share. But there was this ego side of me, this fear-based side of me, that I was afraid to share it because of how I would be perceived and how it would be perceived. But it doesn't surprise me now. That inner knower wanted to share it. And when I did share it, it was widely received and widely accepted. Because the inner knower knows what's up. The intuition knows what's up. Now, listen, this has been a work in progress for me for a long time, and I finally feel like I'm ready to unleash the soul sciences in the world. On December 11th, 2024, at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, I'll be hosting a webinar to introduce you guys to the soul sciences, astrology, human design, gene keys, soul contracts, and there are other systems as well, Mayan astrology and the life you were born to live. And we'll dabble in a little bit of all of them. But this is an intro webinar just to get your feet wet about what these systems really are and what they reveal. December 11th, 2024 at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'll be hosting a webinar. It's completely free. Guys, I'm going to put the link in the comments, in the show notes. I got plenty of room. I've made it open for 100 people. Well, I'll show up for whoever shows up and whoever registers. But if you have any inkling into some mystical systems that will absolutely set your soul free to be authentic and to be purposeful and to be meaningful, find a new level of value and significance in this world, register for the webinar. And I'd love to show you how these things can help you unlock new levels of all kind of goodness inside of you. You can call it a coming out party. I don't know what it is, but what I know is it sure does feel awesome to continue to unlock new levels of authenticity. But in order to do that, you have to learn to trust yourself, and you have to learn to trust the inner knower, the intuition that's inside of you. Have you dimmed that volume, or are you amplifying the volume? Come on the path with me. Register for the Soul Sciences, the Introduction to the Soul Sciences webinar, and let's get started. I'll help you. I'll help you learn who you're really here. I'll help you trust who you really are and why you're here. And when you Start to trust who you are. And when you connect deeply with why you're here, everything else in your life will make sense. Only every single time have I seen this to be true.